At the dinner table, my stepbrother leans in close and whispers, "Don't tell anyone you're pregnant. Tonight isn't about you." I stare at him. "It's my child." He tightens his jaw. "You'll ruin Dad's announcement." I look up and realize everyone at the table is watching us. The candles are flickering. The room smells like roast meat and expensive wine. And in that moment, I understand this wasn't just a family dinner. This was a setup. My name is Rachel Donovan, and I'm 36 years old. I work as a paralegal at a mid-sized law firm. For years, I've read contracts, wills, estate plans, and quiet family disputes that people never want to talk about out loud. I know how documents are structured. I know what certain clauses actually mean. And I know when something has been written to protect one person at the expense of another. I wasn't the loud one in my family. I wasn't the one they praised at gatherings or bragged about to relatives. That role belonged to my stepbrother Ethan. He was the favorite, the future of the family business, the one my stepdad talked about like he'd already won something. I built my own life quietly. Small apartment, stable job, careful savings. I never asked anyone for anything. My pregnancy wasn't planned, but it was wanted, deeply wanted. My boyfriend passed away in a car accident 4 months ago. This baby is the only piece of him I have left. My family knows that. They've known since the beginning. I wasn't rich or glamorous, but I had something none of them expected. I knew exactly how families protect their money, and I knew how they hide the truth inside legal language when they think nobody is reading closely enough. If your own family has ever treated your happiness like an inconvenience, hit subscribe. Have you ever had news that should have been celebrated treated like a problem? Drop it in the comments, and click hype so this story finds someone who needs to hear it. The dinner was called for my stepdad's major family announcement. Everyone dressed up. My aunt kept making comments about when I would settle down properly. Ethan kept cutting me off every time I tried to speak, redirecting conversations back to himself with that easy confidence he's always had. When dessert arrived, my stepdad stood up. He announced he was transferring majority ownership of the family construction company to Ethan. There was applause. Toasts were raised. Ethan looked around the table like a man who had already decided how the rest of his life would go. I waited for a pause. Then I said gently, "I actually have news too. I'm expecting." Silence. Not the warm kind. Ethan laughed under his breath and said loudly, "Let's not complicate tonight." My stepdad's face hardened. "Rachel, this isn't the time." Then Ethan said it, casually, like it was already settled. "We just finalized the trust. Any new dependents could affect distribution." I froze. I hadn't known there was a trust being finalized. Nobody had told me. No phone call, no letter, no heads up of any kind. And now, sitting at a dinner table surrounded by family, I was hearing about legal documents that directly affected my child for the very first time. That's when it clicked. This dinner wasn't about celebration. It was about locking me out, and locking out my baby before anyone even had to say it directly. In the days that followed, I started finding out exactly how far things had gone. Paperwork was rushed through just days before the dinner. I got copies through routine public filing requests, the kind of thing I do regularly at work. Inside was a clause that excluded what the document called non-marital descendants from automatic trust shares unless approved by the full board of trustees. Ethan was one of the trustees. I was not. I went to him privately. I kept my voice calm. I asked him to explain it. He shrugged and said, "It's just business." Just business. That's what he called leaving my child out of a family trust while I was still grieving the person I was supposed to raise that child with. Then came the whisper campaign. My aunt started telling relatives I had been unstable since the accident. I overheard Ethan telling a cousin that I was using the pregnancy for sympathy. At church, people who had known me my whole life started looking at me differently, tilting their heads, choosing their words carefully around me. Then my stepdad invited me over alone. He made tea. He sat across from me with that look he gets when he thinks he's being reasonable. He said, "If you keep quiet about the pregnancy until after the fiscal year ends, we can avoid complications." I asked, "Complications for who?" He didn't answer. I drove home in silence. I didn't cry. I sat with what he had actually said, and I translated it the way I would translate any document at work. They needed time. They needed the trust structure to be fully sealed before my child could be legally acknowledged as a potential heir. Every week they bought was a week closer to making it impossible to challenge. I stopped reacting. I started reading. What none of them knew was that I had handled trust disputes before, not as the lead attorney, but I had sat in enough meetings, filed enough motions, and read enough case law to understand exactly what kind of misconduct leaves a paper trail. I requested every public document connected to the trust. I went through them at my kitchen table late at night with a highlighter and a legal pad. That's when I found it. Certain documents had been backdated by 2 weeks. The dates didn't match the filing timestamps I pulled separately. I started saving emails. Ethan had been careless, copying me on threads he probably forgot I was part of. Threads where he talked about keeping Rachel quiet and waiting until everything is sealed. I saved every one. Then I recorded a conversation. He called me one afternoon, relaxed and confident, and said, "Once the papers are sealed, she can't touch it." He meant me. He meant my child. He said it like it was already done. I wasn't trying to destroy my family. I was protecting the only family I had left, the one growing inside me that hadn't asked for any of this. Mr. Callahan had been our family's lawyer years ago. He drafted my mother's will before she passed. He always treated me fairly, always made sure I understood what I was signing and why. I called his office and asked for a quiet consultation. He reviewed everything I brought him. He went through it slowly, page by page. Then he looked up and said, "This was rushed." He confirmed that if trustees had knowingly moved to exclude a biological heir while trustees were already aware of a pregnancy, that could constitute fiduciary misconduct. The backdating compounded it. The recorded conversation made it documentable. Meanwhile, Ethan was announcing expansion plans publicly. My stepdad was telling relatives that everything was secured now. They moved through those weeks like men who had already closed a door and walked away from it. I let them believe that. I didn't call, I didn't argue, I stayed quiet the way they wanted, just not for the reasons they assumed. Mr. Callahan prepared formal notice letters. We met in his office on a Tuesday morning. The meeting was framed as a routine paperwork clarification. conversation. Ethan walked in confident, jacket pressed, checking his phone. My stepdad sat down without looking at me. Mr. Callahan laid the documents on the table. He walked them through the backdated filings calmly and without drama. Then he pressed play on a small recorder. Ethan's voice filled the room. Once the papers are sealed, she can't touch it. Nobody moved. Ethan said, "That was taken out of context." Mr. Callahan didn't raise his voice. He explained fiduciary duty clearly. He explained that knowingly structuring a trust to exclude a biological heir while trustees were already aware of a pregnancy created significant legal exposure. The backdating compounded it. My stepdad had gone pale. I spoke once. I kept my voice steady. I wasn't asking for control. I was asking for acknowledgement. Ethan snapped. "You're blowing up the family." I looked at him. "No, you tried to erase mine." Mr. Callahan slid revised documents across the table. Equal beneficiary protections for my child. Independent trustee oversight going forward. Ethan's unilateral authority reduced significantly. The room was very quiet. For the first time since any of this began, they understood that I had never been the quiet one. I had simply been waiting. Legal protections for my child were secured. I didn't celebrate. I sat in my car afterwards and just breathed. My stepdad called that evening. He said, "We could have handled this privately." I said, "You should have." I stopped going to family gatherings that felt like obligations. I started preparing for motherhood the way I prepare for everything, carefully, thoroughly, without asking anyone's permission. Ethan stopped reaching out entirely. The trust stands now, fair this time, with oversight that means no one person can make quiet decisions that affect everyone else. I didn't fight for money. I fought because my child deserved to enter this world without already being whispered about like a problem someone needed to manage. Have you ever been told to stay quiet to protect someone else's image? Has your family ever treated your child like an inconvenience before they were even born? Tell me in the comments. Every story matters. Subscribe if you believe no family should silence a mother. Click hype to help this reach someone who needs it today. Your story has power. If this one connected with you, share it and leave your thoughts below. Every bit of support helps this community grow. Thank you for being here and for listening.